Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of the Exploring Antinatalism Podcast, a podcast all about the subject of antinatalism created by antinatalists. My name is Amanda Oldfan-Sukanik, also known as Forever Wolf Films on YouTube, and today I'm so excited to be joined by the author of Every Cradle Is a Grave, Sarah Perry. So welcome, Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love doing podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's violate some sacredness, huh? So of course you are the author of Every Cradle Is a Grave. But before we begin speaking about your book, I was curious if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and the work and the writing that you've done over the years.
Well, I started blogging sort of in the golden age of blogging, I guess, around 2006, 2007. And it was kind of how I learned how to write. Kind of having this encounter with philosophy, and being, I feel like I was a very different person then.
Mm-hmm.
Taking it so seriously that I don't think I've taken anything that seriously in the rest of my whole life. Like, the time that I spent like just kind of having this really, I guess, trying to have a really rich model in my head and trying to be correct, and I still, I don't think I'm at that point at all. I think my focus has kind of changed, but so that was the kind of blogging period. The View from Hell was my blog at that time. I met Chip Smith is his name. The guy who published Every Cradle Is a Grave, and we were friends when I was still blogging. He was kind of, bouncing off ideas against each other at that point, and he proposed that I write a book. And kind of helped me put it together, just every week trying to turn something into a chapter, and and that was something I never thought I'd do, write a book. It was both easier and harder in different ways than I thought it would be.
Right. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, I guess that was like 6 years ago. I don't know what I've been doing since then, screwing around. I wrote on Ribbon Farm. I haven't done that too much lately. And Ribbon Farm is a Venkatesh Rao's blog. I was a contributing editor for a while. I would usually write something every month, and now I kind of don't know what I'm up to as far as writing. Just writing something when I feel like it, trying to figure out how fiction works. And now that the novel is dead, I feel like it's a good time to start exploring fiction.
Oh, have you been writing a novel?
Oh yeah. It's actually the second one I've started. So I wrote about a third of a novel, and now I have another maybe third of a novel. So,
oh wow! Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, I'd definitely love to ask you more about that in a little bit. Can you tell me when and how you first encountered the subject of antinatalism?
Oh yeah, it was kind of like an addiction. I don't really believe this, but people talk about hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I had this, it wasn't related to drugs or addiction or anything, but I kind of feel like I had a life rock bottom. And that was the point at which I kind of encountered this like world flipping, value flipping idea that was amazing to me because it made so much sense.
Yeah.
It made sense of, kind of everything. And yet it was so not making sense to a lot of other people. So it was very polarizing, kind of there's a term, a scissor statement from, who Scott Alexander is,
I don't.
Star Codex.
I know that term though.
Yeah. So just something that, so it was very interesting. It seemed like the whole core of the meaning of life or whatever was this very contested thing, and I think at first I really had hopes from my kind of STEM rationalist background that there would just be an answer, and it was just silliness thinking that there weren't just answers to these questions, and I was pretty disappointed by what analytic philosophy had to offer, but I'm glad I went through that. I think it was fun. It was a good way to spend my time, and it changed my brain.
Yeah. Was your introduction to antinatalism in the form of, say, David Benatar or other things on the internet? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what I was reading that was like next to that, but there was something I was reading other non-American kind of English Anglosphere philosophers. I can't think of the guy's name, an Australian, and Benatar was sort of in that group for some reason. And
okay.
And yeah, I got a hold of Better Never to Have Been, and I had just, I was seriously into Parfit's Reasons and Persons at that time anyway, which is something that he takes pretty seriously in that. And I love Reasons and Persons for different reasons, not just the sort of theory X, that the population theory that Benatar takes very seriously. But so it was just like all of these things that I took as normal or took as sort of foundational could be interpreted in these strange ways. And it was almost like antinatalism is very connected to trolling in my mind. I think trolling is very important. And it's just like, what you could, and I think that's a lot of what philosophy is at its best. Like that's what Socrates is doing. That's what Wittgenstein is doing. I mean, so yeah, I think they're inherently connected in my mind. I can't separate them because it's so ridiculous from one point of view, and it makes so much sense from another point of view, and it makes everybody mad, and the troll that all other trolls like sprout out of. I don't know.
Yeah, I listened to the podcast that you did with Guy McPherson on Nature Bats Last. Yeah, it was quite a while ago. I think in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And I know that in that interview you said something about trolling, and I just thought it was so funny because by trolling you mean sort of like in the sense of how disruptive it is. Yeah. Am I correct? Yeah, I can agree with that. I think
trolling's one of those things. Like one thing I'm obsessed with now is the idea of how we deal with abstract nouns. Like any kind of word you want to think about that people take seriously, like philosophy or disgust or psychology, anything like that. Like there's like we can use those, and we sort of seem to know what each other means some of the time. I think trolling is one of those abstract nouns where people mean a lot. It has a lot of richness, and it's always getting used in different ways. Right. And we can learn a lot from it. There's always going to be more there. I don't think there's like one definition. And I think it has to do with the sort of trickster move. It has to do with recognizing that you're not epistemically grounded when you might be tempted to think that you are. And the most important person to troll is yourself.
Right. So no, fascinating. I think I understand what you mean.
Often it's the best person. You're best at trolling yourself.
Well, you have the consent to control yourself, right? Like when it comes to when it comes to internet trolling, it's a bit more of a violation, let's say. But I understand what you mean, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, so you talked a little bit about this already, but like, what did inspire you to just actually sit down and write Every Cradle Is a Grave, and what was the process of writing the book for you?
Yeah, just the constant ongoing surprise of not being able to communicate this idea that I thought was so clear, and just hitting my head against it over and over. And a lot of people have said they read my book, they still don't agree with it, but they really enjoyed it and they took a lot out of it. So whatever effort that was, for me at the time, early on, it was just like convincing people, like, this is the most important thing. They have to believe I'm right. They have to believe this is true. Mm-hmm. And now it doesn't. It feels like I don't put myself as in that privileged of a place anymore, that it's more like, whoa, this is wild. Can you believe this follows from these other things? Or like, I don't know. It doesn't seem that important to me, right? It seems more important to have, interesting conversations.
I can understand that, and you wrote the book in 2014. It was published in 2014.
2014. But... So I was living in San Antonio, and I was, writing like a chapter a week or so and sending them to Chip and revising my outline, my, what do you call it, a table of contents. And and some of it was based on stuff I'd written before, and some of it was new. I think the part I most regret is just spending so much time lovingly, like, I don't want to use a naughty word, but being really excited about Jonathan Haidt, like,
oh,
like as if like it's my personal savior or something. Like, he's fine, but I cringe at taking any psychological idea that seriously now. That one of those abstract nouns that's been reduced to a questionnaire. That
right.
I feel kind of silly about that. I still think he's one of the best in his field, but I cringe at taking that seriously.
I didn't have a feeling like you overused him, so to speak, in the book, but yeah, okay, interesting. Again, you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but I mean, what was the general reaction to Every Cradle Is a Grave, especially from in antinatalist circles? How did you perceive the reaction to it?
I can't really remember.
That's okay. That's all right. It was a while ago.
Good. Yeah. I think it was good. I have I don't really read too many comments or reviews these days, so I wasn't doing it too much then. Like, when people bother to like reach out and say, you know, they liked it, usually they're not going to reach out and say like, you're horrible, I can't believe what a terrible book you wrote.
Yeah, I actually think it's safe to say it's probably one of the most beloved books in antinatalist circles. Yeah, absolutely, without question. I myself have read it twice, and there was so much in my second reading of it that I hadn't, you know, fully absorbed. I mean, every time I look at it, you know, I find new things, and I'm like, wow, she actually really did address that, which is amazing, because you do address a lot of things that a lot of antinatalist works don't. Out of curiosity, do you follow the development of antinatalism online at all through social media? I know you're on Twitter, but do you follow Reddit and Facebook and YouTube and all that?
Not really. I have a hard time sustaining interest in anything for more than a month or two. So
I understand.
like right now, I'm really into like MMA strategy videos. I don't fight at all.
Okay.
But that's what that's my current obsession right now.
Cool. Very, very cool. I like martial arts myself, so
I don't really follow the development of that. I don't know. Has there like what's going on lately? What is up with the?
It's been very interesting the last couple of years. So for my part, you know, I started being involved with this about 10 years ago because there was this massive explosion of interest in the subject on YouTube about 10 years ago. And, you know, lots of response videos back and forth about the idea. And, you know, so for my part, I've just been sort of involved with it ever since. I made a movie about the subject. Yeah. And, but yeah, in the last year, there's been just this explosion of antinatalism in places like India. There was a guy named Raphael Samuel who didn't even do it, but he threatened to sue his parents for giving him life. And there was, and it was like just the amount of international coverage of the subject was unbelievable. So it's, we're sort of at a point now where people are starting to organize more. There's a South American antinatalist Facebook group with 100,000 members.
Wow.
There's a group that originates in Lebanon and Egypt that has over 70,000. So internationally, it's become really quite huge, or starting
Egypt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's developing in ways that blow my mind. Really, like you'd never think that would happen. You know. Yeah.
You're blowing my mind. I would not have predicted that.
I'll have to send you some links when we're later on. Yeah, because it is kind of extraordinary. The front cover of your book was, of course, drawn by the great Jack Kevorkian. I was wondering if you could tell me about what your interactions with Jack Kevorkian was like. Did you only have contact with him through email?
Yeah, I never met him. My Chip went through his lawyers to get permission. It was right before he died, I believe. And I unfortunately never met him. Respect what he did with his life, putting skin in the game. Yeah, he seems also just a kind of awesome troll. Have you ever read any interviews with him?
I have. I've watched a lot of his
hilarious.
Too. Yeah, he was an amazing person.
Yeah.
Great sardonic wit and Some people have criticized your use of this image because they don't like the use of this kind of imagery in association with antinatalism.
My young friends especially make so much fun of me for
really
for having that image. I feel like a reason to do something is to make young people cringe, so I don't really feel bad about it. So.
I also often employ the use of cringe in my antinatalist artistic activism, so I totally get you on that. Totally agree. Yeah, I do think it's appropriate iconography nonetheless, but yeah. Maybe perhaps we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I just wanted to ask briefly about the Ribbon Farm work. So you're not really doing writing for Ribbon Farm anymore. When you did write regularly, were you writing at all about antinatalism on that site?
Not too much.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt odd because Venkat had like, he might still just had like my book is like on the sidebar of the thing. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, almost like, I don't necessarily want that to be the first thing people associate with every idea I have, but nobody cares. So who cares? I just felt like so blessed, and that's a dumb way to put it, but like people really will just let you get away with doing your thing for so much of the part. Like I mean, if you kind of choose your audience and choose how you react to it, but I'm really lucky with the audience I have. And it was really cool. I feel like I got so much out, like really thanks to Venkat. Those years that I was writing some serious, like 10,000 word piece or something every month almost. And one of my friends is collecting some of those in a book, so that'll be coming out fairly soon.
Oh, excellent!
That's kind of fun, just stuff, and stuff I haven't even I forgot I wrote some of the time. So that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
But yeah, so I had this weird experience where, so I quit smoking a couple of years ago, and then I quit vaping because I started vaping from smoking, and you can't get the good flavors anymore. So
yeah.
And then I gained a bunch of weight. So I gained 15 pounds. And then I started, have you heard of the keto diet? Like everybody's keto now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I started the keto diet, and it cured my depression.
Wow. Okay.
It's so dumb and it's so embarrassing, but it happened. But so it also, one of the weird psychological effects of it was within days. It was just amazing. It was kind of like fasting. I just had really good effects from fasting. And I was like, oh, maybe it's anorexia. But it's just the same effect of fasting, except you can still eat food. But it's
okay.
Anyway, I don't know. So some people have similar results. Some people do much better with carbohydrates. But anyway, so one of the weird effects of this was just not feeling pressure to write anymore. I had.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know if it has been a year. It's just a really long time where I was just, spending my time going in the mountains and not having too many thoughts and knitting shawls. And most of my thoughts would be connected to making new lace patterns or something. And it was just, cool. I don't know. It was like having a different kind of brain.
Yeah.
I think there's all kinds of weird levers we can push on our brains and we don't know anything about them. So
yeah.
I've been writing more lately. I'm getting more used to writing within this mental state, but it was just I don't know, I like writing to some degree, but it was also it was the have to do it thing.
Yeah.
And now it's more of a voluntary, it's not a pressure to feel like I have to express this thing. I don't know. It's more it's an optional thing.
Yeah, I can understand that. You also have a personal website called The View from Hell. A number of people I spoke with were curious why this site was down for quite a while. It's nice to see that it's back.
I just feel really exposed having old writings of mine that were kind of shitposts from 2010. It just feels silly to have. So yeah, so rather than feel exposed, I kind of took it post. I mean, now when somebody asks for something, I'll usually undraft it and make it public again. So there's a few up there that I have a couple different sites. I just try to be low key and
yeah.
I don't want to be famous or anything. I don't want to be easily identifiable. There's a million people named Sarah Perry. No one has any idea which Sarah Perry. So I don't know. I feel. Yeah, I try. So Venkateshwar, the Ribbon Farm co-creator, he has this. He's really into legibility from the James C. Scott book. But yeah, I try not to be too legible, and I don't know. I don't like being attached to my whole internet history. God forbid I become attached to my internet comment history from 2004 or something. I think forgetting is a really good function of the internet.
Okay, so I have a number of questions submitted by the Friendly Antinatalist, who's somebody else that was also interviewed on this show, I think in episode 9, if I'm not mistaken. She's a big fan of your work. I wanted to mention that she actually, one of the projects that she just finished was actually creating an index for Every Cradle Is a Grave, which is really, really cool. I'll send you the PDF. Cool. It's just, it's very, very awesome. Just as a better way to be able to explore the work easily. So she asks, and I have questions from her kind of sprinkled into the whole thing. But do you have a personal preferred theory of normative ethics?
Oh, I would have said kind of yes, but I've spent the past like 6 months being kind of blown away by how fake words are. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's mostly the ethnomethodology, which comes out of phenomenology, which comes out of this rejection of idealism to some degree. So something like ethics, like what is good. I don't believe in those words. I don't think those words have much meaning. I think it's tempting to treat them as if they have meaning. It's kind of a fun game even. Like, I don't think it's wrong to do analytic philosophy. It's fun as hell. But I don't really believe that is having an encounter with the world. I think things like looking in someone's face and seeing how they feel based on your own experience with them is much more real than a word like good or ethics. And I just don't think you can zoom out and do it from that perspective. Like even as analytic as antinatalism is, I think it's grounded in the main thing I know is what it's like to be me. The main judgment I'm making is, should I make more of that experience? It's somewhat predictably close to that experience. And that's where I really locate it. So it's not so much of a top-down, like doing math theory of ethics. Like utilitarianism makes a lot of sense if you can predict everything about the world. Consequentialist utilitarianism.
Sure.
I mean, if we have perfect information, we can do a lot of things, and maybe someday that'll be relevant, but it's not relevant now.
Okay.
I don't know. So I try, and this is just sort of a recent development of trying to get really small scale, starting to think that anecdotes have a lot more meaning than a study. If an anecdote from somebody I trust and know means a lot more than sort of data whose source I don't know, whose form of presentation I have nothing about. So that's kind of been the movement I've been going toward. I'll probably swing back the other way eventually, but I'm exploring this side of it, of nebulosity, and trying to figure out what we mean by abstract nouns.
Okay. Yep. What is your position on free will and determinism? And is there any reason why you did not include these concepts in Every Cradle Is Grave?
I kind of think they're like boring. I don't have a lot to say. I think if anything, they're maybe like concepts that make you think about things worse. I don't know. People had fun playing that game of, is there free will, is there not free will? I just don't think it makes any sense for what I care about. So there was a time maybe in 2008 when I would have had an opinion on that, but I don't know. There's animal reality. There's what it's like to be in a person. I don't know if that's free will. I don't know. I mean, there's the regularity of the observations of physics, but I don't. It's almost like, have you ever read stuff from like the 6th century and it's just so alien? Like, it's just like, how does this argument follow?
Yeah.
Like, what you just said A and B and then you derived C from it. It's kind of like that for me. Like, I just can't, like, there was a time when I could follow it. I can't follow it anymore. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just,
right.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist, and how did you come to that position? Should antinatalism and promoting atheism be a part of antinatalist activism, in your opinion?
I'm an atheist, yeah. Atheist activism is so cringy. Don't do atheist activism.
Well, the community hasn't done itself a lot of favors a lot of the time. There's
so many good things you can do that are not worshiping a god, that are not doing atheist activism. No, I don't. It's fine. That's a fine game. I think people had a lot of fun playing that game in like the 80s and 90s. So why not? I mean, if people are still interested in it, obviously it's a good game. So
okay.
I feel like there's interesting criticisms of atheism. How much easier it is to conceive of simulationism than it is to conceive of God. I don't take beliefs very seriously. I don't know what God is. I don't know what that means, but it's not a life hypothesis for me, and I think that's partly developmental. Just like how you grow up depends. That's what's going to be the possible life hypotheses.
Okay.
And you're probably not just going to have some wild thing become a life hypothesis late in life, unless it already sort of has the plausibility structure laid for it. People around you believe something similar. And
so I wanted to talk a little bit about suicide, the right to die. You write so much about so much good stuff about the right to die in your book. There's so many different ways we can proceed, but I mean, how in your opinion, how do you think right to die activism needs to proceed from here? What do we do, and what needs to happen first, I guess?
Well, I think the front line is in the hospital. Like one thing I've seen, my grandmother died a couple of years ago, and she had a long period of being not together, not herself. And, and my mom said that at one point she was in the hospital after a fall. She had a stroke, and she had a DNR, and the surgeon had just threw it across the room like it didn't even matter.
Oh,
so I think that's kind of the front line. Is it worth the paper it's printed on? Even if, to the extent that there are laws, I mean, there are some laws already, but how do we make sure that's, I mean, and I think that's an individual basis. Like you're doing, patient advocacy for yourself and for the people you can help around you, making sure people have advance directives, and also making sure that they're enforced to the extent that they can be. And sometimes it's just not possible. I mean, I think there's been a lot of progress. It's been a better couple decades than I would have thought, but I don't know too much about politics and making laws and stuff, but just in terms of like what can people do while who's dying around you, like that's maybe the level in which you can help, rather than trying to write letters to Congress people. Maybe that works. I just don't know about that kind of thing. It's never going to be a popular cause. You have to accept that. Like the culture has to change before the law changes. And I think it's better if it goes that way. I think abortion's a very important right. I think it's morally required in a lot of situations, but
absolutely.
I think it would have gone better if the states had been allowed to legalize it slowly on their own. I don't think we might not even have an Operation Rescue if that had been allowed to happen. So instead of Roe v. Wade, if it had been allowed to sort of naturally do that, I think that will be a better long-term solution for right to die stuff. If each state kind of adopts its own policies, people are looking around, seeing the old people around them, picturing themselves in that position. I think the culture changes slowly, the laws follow. That's maybe a better long-term solution. And different states having different laws is fine. Like I don't think every state has to be the same, but I think it's so unpopular. If you look at surveys of what people think is moral and immoral, suicide and right to die stuff tends to be at the bottom. So I think there needs to be some degree of culture change before democratic action is really possible.
Yeah, I think the culture does need to change. I think we need like young people involved in it, which is obviously extremely hard. Do you see any hope of that kind of happening, of getting like different generations or different age groups, I should say? Yeah.
Almost all the young people I know are pretty pro right to die. I feel like there's a generational shift. Not all of them, but I feel like I don't know. The young people I know seem to be, they have older parents, older grandparents. They're seeing what aging looks like. I don't know. I think, it's not a uniform thing, but I think it's more of there's at least a large cohort of young people who kind of take that seriously. And I don't know about activism. It's just like I don't want to be preached to. People telling me what to do. I like having a conversation with people. Like I don't like if they have weird ideas, I want to know what their weird ideas are. So I don't know. So I don't know. It's hard. It's almost like I'm like judging people for taking something really seriously, but I just don't know anything about it. I don't know. I don't know how it really works. I don't know how.
I appreciate that. That's all right. I just out of curiosity, I mean, how do you think the subject of antinatalism might help or hinder the advance of right to die activism, or just its progress in the world, if any?
I don't know. It's because people, I think people take them as related issues. I think they are related issues. Do you have to judge one way on one and sort of a consistent way on the other? Is it I think people can go either way on either one. So I don't know if one has to imply a particular belief in the other, if they would affect each other. But it always seems like it's really path dependent, in the sense that you never know. Like, there might be some particular work that joins the two, that makes them now they travel together, like two ideas that were separate, and now or does the opposite process. I think mostly they travel separately. So but also how they reflect on other things. Like, putting those two together, like, there's so much more to suffering minimization, like ending the drug war and ending the FDA and stuff like that. So I like to look at those together, but also say there's this huge other world of if we take suffering seriously, there's a lot of other stuff. I think I'm one of the only antinatalists who's not a vegan.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah, obviously that's probably the most contentious battle within antinatalism is vegan or non-vegan.
My mom is.
Oh, okay, interesting.
She will probably be listening to this, but
okay.
But I have not. I do so much better on a meat-based diet that I don't know. I feel like once we can get the 3D printed beef together, everything will be great. Yeah. For now, the balance of harms is I need to eat meat, and I prefer to eat meat. And I mean, my parents grew most of our food. My dad hunted deer, and we raised a couple cows and some rabbits. And so I don't think that. So one of my friends likes to use the term moral hypochondria.
Okay.
like being really afraid that every particular action you do has some sort of bad effects. And I try to avoid that. Like, I mean, with eating meat, it's so like visceral. It's so like almost emotional. Like, you see the little bunny or whatever. But I think there's so much, like, there's so much worse stuff too. I mean, like, nature's horrible. Nature's like the worst thing in the world. So
yeah.
I don't know. I take a big enough reference class that it doesn't seem like an unforgivable thing, especially given the trade-off with, feeling good and not feeling good. So
well, I don't think I don't think that there's any like absolute obligation to be a vegan and be an antinatalist. Although I guess if you don't mind me saying, I was a bit surprised that you weren't, just because you are an antinatalist that does condemn nature, which I definitely want to talk to you more about in the future. And actually, I was upon second reading of your book, I was surprised by how much you condemn nature, because I just for some reason, amazingly, I hadn't quite picked up on that the first time. So
that's
definitely
what I always like to. Yeah, what I tell you, some people are antinatalists for kind of like environmental reasons, and so I always feel bad, like, oh no, like I think the dolphin should go away too. I think we need to get rid of the apes and the dolphins.
Well, perhaps we should get on that subject now then. So I am also of that opinion. I'm curious, before we go totally into it, I mean, do you have any familiarity with the term ephilism?
Yes. EFFIL, is that the?
It's life spelled backwards. Yeah. Okay. EFILISM.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. Who is that associated with? I think there's one guy who's.
It's Ed Mendham. Yeah. He. So basically, it was a reaction to antinatalism that only dealt with human life. So David Benatar, he mentions the animals. He brings them up a little bit. He does consider them part of the equation, but he did make the decision to separate them, and Most of Better Never to Have Been is an anthropocentric book, and so ephilism was a direct response to that, and it's never separated. It's basically antinatalism for all sentient life, and it does argue for wildlife extinction, wildlife interventionalism, and so I am an ethilist, and I have been for a long time. And you do say some relatively ephilistic things in the book, which is, so you say things like, so sorry, let me just find the quote. Why not spay nature herself? Which I don't know how I missed the first time. Which was a great quote,
That's messed up. That's messed up. I don't remember writing it, but I love it.
Well, I think it's a lot less messed up than most would. So yeah, absolutely. So sorry, so you would consider yourself, at least on some level, to be a sentiocentric antinatalist, or perhaps on an ethylist. I know you're not as familiar with that term, but yeah.
I think when my husband and I joke about it, we generally say, like, you just have to, like, sterilize everything to make sure. Like, maybe there's no suffering possible in microorganisms, but you just want to take the flamethrower and go over it twice just in case, so it can't arise again.
Right.
It's not just the suffering of the thing as it is; it's what will be in the future. And I feel like the big risk to me is human goes pan-galactic.
Right.
I don't think having the planet as it is, like, everything's going pretty well, like on Earth. Like, people are having fewer children, everybody's kind of, I don't know, chilling out, and I mean more than ever in the history of the world. But
more people are behaving as antinatalists without antinatalism.
Exactly.
Even
so that's good, but I think the big risk is, you know, humans getting off the planet and spreading it around, and it's funny too, because a lot of people, that's like their dream, and it's the definition of what's good. So, and that it's true for a lot of my friends. So so it's kind of this tension of, no, we need to flamethrower everything, or no, we need to spread it around before it's kind of that core troll I was talking about, just the core. What is, you know, what if that's good or what if that's bad, that underlies everything.
Right. I mean, do you believe that we have a responsibility to the rest of life on the planet to do something about it before we were to take ourselves out of the equation?
I don't know, responsibility. It would probably be nice. I mean, it's all like fantasy. It's not like we really have the capacity for that, but I mean, you could look at it as, you know, how like the hippies like to sometimes say that we're evolving, so that we're the universe becoming conscious. So maybe we're the universe becoming conscious so we can shut the shit down. Maybe. I mean, that's one story way to put it.
Right. Well, a very common thought experiment within ethylism and slowly more greater antinatalism is the red button thought experiment. So if you were presented with this magical red button and you've pressed it, would just magically turn the universe off, would you press it? And even if you would not, do you think that it would be the right thing to do? Well, how would you answer that?
I would love to do like social science in a lab coat and stuff, and have like a really dramatic red button, have like subjects come in and tell them what it is.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I probably would. I think as a fantasy, of course, that's a fantasy that sometimes makes me just feel calm, like, oh, I could just, you know, also just thinking about all the times the Earth has been hit by asteroids. Is it kind of a meditation practice for me?
Sure, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, so you do acknowledge the suffering in nature, and even though that hasn't necessarily influenced your dietary practices.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like the suffering in nature and in the living world is so bad that eating only a vegan diet is almost like a drop in the bucket. And I feel like it's not the only reason. It's also just like for your personal, like how you look at yourself and how you treat yourself. And like, I'm not saying like it's silly. Like, I don't feel that way. My mom is a vegan. I see her every day. I see how she feels about, like, even not just like her dog and her rescue cats, but like her plants. She like will take people's plants and adopt them. And I don't look down on that. I think that's like, that's a way of living that very compassionate people. Like that's an authentic way of living for them. I don't think it would be authentic for me. That's not how I feel. That's not how I am in the world.
I understand. I mean, I was practically a garbage dump of it. I mean, I ate meat. I've eaten fields of sentient creatures. Let's put it that way. So it was, I mean, it was really a difficult shift for me, but I've been a vegan for 3 years. And I think antinatalism had a huge part in that. And you're right. I mean, it's a very small, tiny bit of any kind of even remote difference that
And it's a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
I respect the sacrifice and its effect on you, and whether or not I think it has a big effect on the suffering in the world, because I don't know what the suffering in the world is. So.
Okay. Yeah. Just one more question about that, because a lot of people wanted me to ask you. I mean, can you share the story behind the profile picture of you holding the dead chicken? Because I know a lot of people were quite
that was just so. My husband and I, we lived in LA. I guess we'd like just decided to get married, and we'd gotten a big freshly killed rooster from one of the places where, like, in what's the San Gabriel, like, where you can get, like, it's the most dense Chinese population outside of mainland China, pretty much. So you can get like beautiful freshly killed old rooster that's like has red flesh, like he has red meat for coq au vin. And so I was very happy to bring him home and get him, and I made him into coq au vin. It was just a nice memory, but I like that picture of you with the chicken. I think it's kind of honest.
Yeah, no, a lot of antinatalists were like, you have to ask her about that, because it was so offensive. So so anyway, I just had to ask.
I'm sorry for offending you. Yeah, it offended Venkat's vegetarian too. It offended him. So no, but not too much.
Well, just want to ask you a little bit more about antinatalism proper. How do we migrate people away from the life producer addiction? How do we get people to find meaning in their own lives without imposing a need for meaning onto someone else?
Create good games, create good art, create good institutions, have fun, connect with people. Take the gifts of the world and turn them in your soul to something beautiful and share that. I don't know. I think the more you do that, like, there's a lot of the reason I think fertility has fallen is opportunity cost. And a lot of it, I think, is the sort of striving status thing of waiting longer and longer to have a child who's going to be highly educated and be very valuable and be high status. But it's also just, there's so much else to do. So if if somebody's only going to have a child because there's like nothing else to do, because they can't find meaning in life, or find just something to do day after day, or they just they're desperate for something to care about. I feel like if there's just other options, I don't know, the more excellent options of things, then the better. I don't know. I struggle with it myself, like what do I do with this time that I have? And it's a matter of having something, enough things to do and enough things to occupy you that you have a satisfying life. And I've been lucky with it, but there's a lot of people who are not lucky with it. And I don't know, it's kind of like one what do you call it, like vulnerable moment could change everything. So it's, I don't know, I think living your life honestly is a way, like here's what my life is like, and not trying to be like I don't know, witnessing for some ideology, but just like here's what reality is, here's how I live. And I appreciate it when people with kids do that too, and they're not trying to sell you on it, they're just, here's what my reality is. And for some people that's the reality they want, and if they choose that, honestly, why not? Like I'm not gonna put my body between them and stop it. So I think people don't change their minds by persuading them. I don't think. It's more like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't believe in arguments anymore that much. Like, I don't believe in trying to like be correct and prove to everyone else that there's one correct thing, but it's more like what possible activities are you doing, or what's out there in the world that's more important. I don't know.
Okay. No. Okay. Dana, the friendly antinatalist, asks, optimism bias is a proven powerful and often irrational influence on people's decision to procreate, and is oftentimes installed in powerful human institutions like religion. Is there a reason you did not explicitly include this concept in Every Cradle Is a Grave?
Oh yeah. So this is also something I've been thinking about a lot for the past 6 months or so, that I've had this sort of indexicality revolution. That I don't think that almost any concept in psychology is actually real. Like optimism bias, like to some degree it's real. You can see it when it happens, when people are just like ignoring their fears, or but you can also see the opposite. There's also pessimism bias. There's also other stuff. I don't think you can just like have an instrument and go in a lab and say, oh, people are biased in this way. There was a great paper recently, I can't pronounce his name, is Gerd Gigerenzer or something like that. Gerd Gigerenzer. It's a German guy. I hope it's German. I have no idea.
We'll find out soon enough. Yeah.
His paper is called "The Bias in Behavioral Psychology." I want to say
interesting.
Like that, but there's a really interesting argument about how kind of the idea of people being biased is overblown. That people are actually pretty smart and they within their context, and that it's almost like science is doing tricks to make people look stupid in unfamiliar situations. So I don't know. I feel like people are just people. They're all different. Everybody's weird. Everybody has maybe experiences that bias them, or otherwise known as you learn. So I don't know. So I guess the answer is I just don't take. I think like I took psychology less seriously every year, and now I'm down to like there's so little that I take seriously. I'm almost like trying to steel man the last dregs of psychometrics and whatever theories that still exist. So
interesting. Okay.
I feel like we don't know anything about psychology. Like I thought there was positive knowledge about suicide, but there's so little. Like I've spent some time researching since I wrote the book, just that how little can be said about suicide, how every pattern you can imagine can be found somewhere. And so it's really hard to find any kind of trend. Sometimes you'll find extremes in small populations, but it's so hard to have positive knowledge. Everybody's hypothesis gets proven wrong somewhere. There's some group who's screwing it up. So I mean, there's trends, there's overall trends, but
right
with age and stuff like that. But overall it's just nobody knows anything. It's a suicide is one of those abstract nouns that I'm obsessed with. What does that even mean? What even is that?
Right. Okay, interesting. I know you spoke a little bit about laws previously. Again, this is a question from Dana, the friendly antinatalist. In Every Cradle Is a Grave, you refrain from making any type of antinatalist public policy suggestions. If you could institute antinatalist policies to counter the cheery social policy you referred to in the book, what would these antinatalist policies be? Some examples: should parents be licensed? Should tax incentives for large families be limited? Should abortion or contraception be completely state subsidized? In the workplace, would child-free people be afforded the same amount of personal time off as parents? Should the pay gap between parents and non-parents at the same job be corrected? Lots to think about. There's a lot.
So, do parents make more than non-parents?
I actually wasn't aware of that. I frankly wouldn't be surprised.
There's so many ways it could be, because it could be people selecting into childbearing who are having lower economic or income capacity, but also potentially selecting into marriage because they have higher income capacity. So there's just so many ways it could go. I don't know. So public policy, I'm pretty libertarian. I think the best thing that could happen is that we make gene editing real legal and a real going concern. And maybe you have to save up for a really long time to have a child that can compete with the other children, but they'll be really good people. I think one of the things people most care about when you look at surveys of how would you gene edit your child is to get rid of mental illness. So it's like they don't even care about the superficial stuff as much as like people really do care, how happy their kids are going to be. So I think if you can set the market loose on that, it would be very good. I would like to. I mean, that's kind of a futuristic thing, because I just think there would be happier people and fewer people if that is kind of like taking education to an extreme. Like instead of just having a child and then paying $20,000, $100,000 a year to educate it, as increasing as for 20 years or something, having this more one-time investment, but that's also more, investing directly in the technology to make better people who will make better people who will whatever, hopefully making fewer people as they go along. I think that's usually how it works.
Right.
The happier and better off people are, the fewer of them they have around.
I think that's true. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you briefly, are you familiar at all with the term pro-mortalism?
Yeah, meaning pro-death, like.
So it's
I haven't really heard that, but that's a possible view.
it's a difficult term. I mean, the reason I bring it up is because so I had a friend, Juwoon Huang, or Juwoon Hung, I believe is more how you correctly pronounce it, and he wrote a book called Anti-Procreation. No, actually, that was his pen name, was Anti-Procreation, and it was called Procreation is Murder. And he was very influenced by you. Your Every Cradle Is a Grave was one of his biggest sources of inspiration. And we don't know specifically if he coined the term pro-mortalism, but it seems like he did. And it has a lot of different meanings. It's kind of a crazy term that I've seen applied to every circumstance under the sun where something dies. But I think the way that he meant it is that it is sort of always better to, not only is it better never to have been, but it is always better to cease existing somewhat immediately, Yeah. And so it's a term that I feel is applied to too many things. It's greatly misused. But I think there's a kernel of truth in it, at least to the way that he was expressing it. So again, I just was kind of curious about what your thoughts might be on that term and how you think it might differ from pro-death, which I also sort of is applied in a lot of circumstances. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
There's an interesting theory that I can't think of the researcher right now I think it was his master's thesis, and then he might have done a PhD based on that, but it was the idea that it was a sort of evolutionary psychology thing. The idea that many mental illnesses, what we think of as mental illnesses, are adaptations to prevent us from killing ourselves.
Interesting. Okay.
So you get depression, you get real still and real not good at anything and real incompetent. So you can't kill yourself.
Okay.
So it's a little
interesting.
But that's, I think that's maybe an extension of a sort of pro-mortalism baked into reality, that if you become, and I don't know how seriously I take it, I just love the idea, I think it's really funny. Yeah. But the more you make a conscious being, the more obviously the choice is to just cease existing at any moment. So you have to bake in all of these hacks to get it to not kill itself all the time. I just think that's really funny to think of how much of a human being is that. It's just a thing that's been jury-rigged to not kill itself.
Yeah. Okay. I don't really have anything to add specifically about pro-mortalism. But yes, I'm always a little confused by the term pro-death, just because again, it seems to be applied to so much.
Benatar uses it for abortion specifically. But I've heard it apply. You could say, calling people a death cult, whatever. Just sort of a generic. Any word can mean anything. But that's what words are. They're to mean a lot of different things, and using a word as a move in a game and using it in a particular way.
So I know
I'm like the worst. I'm like the worst person to interview because you're like asking me a question.
All.
Like, well, what are words really? Like every time. I'm sorry.
Please don't apologize. Actually, I have to tell you, I'm quite used to that in the antinatalist crowd. Everybody says that eventually, so it's okay. No, not at all.
People living in the abstraction bleeding edge. A little
Exactly. Everything has to be called into question, including the words we use. So it's more than fair. I mean, you've spoken a little bit about. I mean, you're not super into the idea of activism. But, I mean, do you believe we are living in a kind of a unique time right now with what's going on in the world? And this might be sort of
an interesting time.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting time.
Yeah. I think we're kind of living in a unique moment, maybe, for certainly the right to die, probably antinatalism, where it's probably like, there's probably never been a more relevant time to fight for those things. Do you agree with that?
people are suddenly having to think about the reality of nursing homes. And I think mostly we don't think about nursing homes and other forms of human storage, like the schools and the places that we store humans, mostly behaviorally inert all day in institutions and in rooms. And it could be a very interesting time. I don't know. I'm not predicting more than a day out from this. I never know what's going to happen with this stuff. I don't know.
I don't either.
But it could be. People are at least having encounters with mortality and with,
Yeah. I mean, I know for a while they were talking about instituting like universal DNRs, and okay, that's great, but it's like there's never been a better time to like have a right to die. I mean, especially with the low resources, like, okay, you know, if somebody wants to just leave and not go through it, well, maybe they can have the respirator that I would have had, or so I would like to see people get more active during this time, although it's hard to expect that of people you know, when everybody is in a declining state, so to speak. So
and people are concerned with consent to die, like if people are going to be, you know, are they just going to be euthanized? But I think people don't think about to what degree are people lying in nursing homes consenting to what's done to them in general. Like, I mean, I've probably spent a decent amount of time in nursing homes when
I have too,
when that's been necessary, you know, not for long periods of time, but it's I don't know how voluntary that is. Like, I don't know. It's easy to keep people alive just barely. It's easier than it is to have the language and the I don't know, ethical structure to deal with what the prolonging life means. And
it's extremely sad. I mean, when you take into account all the people who wouldn't be there because they would have made the choice to exit before they had to, you know, be in a situation where they leave their homes, and it's extremely sad. Wanted to ask you briefly, just another question about the podcast that you did with Nature Bats Last with Guy McPherson. You mentioned towards the end that you were interested in the theory of humor, and I just I was wondering, since obviously that podcast was a while ago, if you'd continued to explore that idea and do writing on that subject.
I've written a couple things. I don't know if it was since then. I wrote at least one thing, maybe two things about the theory of humor that I was most excited about was the Daniel Dennett's one of the authors, called Inside Jokes.
Okay, I heard of that.
Just a beautiful, elegant evolutionary theory of mirth and laughter and jokes, and so I've incorporated that into a couple things. I wrote one thing called On Some Possibilities for Life as a Joke. That was about, could you live your life as a joke? What would that look like? What would that mean? Obviously, it's great to write a very serious essay about something like living your life as a joke. So I've written a little about that. I think humor is one of those big things that's just a huge mystery that people act like it's not a mystery because they think they understand it, but it's so weird. And I know there's a lot of things like that, like dreams and I don't know. Almost anything that you can bring your consciousness to, though, is something like that. Like almost every aspect of reality is something like that. That's not normal. Like, how do we take that for granted? And then there'll be 20 other things like that right next to it. So how do you decide what to take, what not to take for granted?
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we're sort of nearing the end of what I have prepared. I wanted to, I think we've been speaking for about an hour or so.
Great.
I wanted to ask you just sort of what you're working on currently. I know you mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn how to write fiction. So I wrote a third of a really bad novel, and now I'm writing a third of a hopefully slightly better novel.
Okay.
One, set a few hundred years in the future. Kind of trying to figure out how do people figure out what's true when anything can be defaked? How do people deal with their lives when they live in a really rich and happy world? And how do they, kind of like the epilogue concern, like what does that even look like? Like they're almost actually at the end of history, so trying to figure out what living in that state looks like. And so I don't know, trying different things with dance art forms that they have.
Cool. Okay.
It's just it's very freeing. It's like I don't have to, I don't know, that's how my style sort of evolved lately. They're not trying to fit into any preconceived form that, not becoming, I guess, less and less academic and more shitposty over time. So.
So you're doing dancing yourself, or writing about it?
Right,
awesome.
both actually. Yeah. They have this, the people have this art form that's kind of a dance game where the audience is not just an audience, they're the crowd that sort of dances the chorus parts with the bigger people. So I've been trying to bring something like kind of physical to that. So on my stupid little runs, I'll be like dancing off the rocks and doing dances, and everybody's so happy to see it. They're just like, there's not many people out there, but they're just like, if somebody's like having fun and expressing joy, everybody's just like applauding. And so.
Well, it sounds similar to like a call and response in improv. Improv is it? Yeah.
Kind of, cool. Just and trying to be really present on how do you actually react to this, and how do you not disrupt and contribute to the whole storytelling of this ongoing dance form.
Very cool.
That's what I've been thinking about.
Do you think you would do some of that like as an actual stage kind of thing, or video?
Oh, like, this is just my form is writing. My form is just although I'm really interested. I feel like the most important form right now is YouTube videos. Like that's a living art form. That's what I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing it myself. I'm only interested in art forms that are like hundreds of years old and ancient, like making shawls and novels. But, but I respect it. That's like where I get a lot of my ideas and content and
Oh my God, I'd love it if you made YouTube videos. People would go crazy. People are like, oh my God, Sarah Perry's making YouTube videos.
I feel like that's the most interesting form right now. And there's so many geniuses of the form.
Oh yes. Yes. Yeah, well, I very much agree. YouTube is YouTube completely changed my life. Just being a viewer of YouTube completely changed my life. And just having that record of your own life as you continue, make videos for years and years. It's
and being able to learn almost anything immediately, like by watching somebody do it, having them explain what it is, like whether it's some ancient craft or like fixing plumbing or something. Like it's so cool.
It's unbelievable. It's one of the best learning tools of all time, for sure. Okay, wonderful. Do you plan to continue to write about antinatalism at all? Or are you working on any other projects about AN or suicide or other topics of that kind?
I'm more working on language, like like what are how do we launder words, like money laundering, kind of like word laundering is my term for that. And so I'm more like philosophy of language stuff, I guess. Still, it's kind of like random, like whatever happens to annoy me, I'll really focus on that. So I don't know whether it's domestic violence statistics one day or like I don't know, it's clinical psychology the next day. So
cool.
I don't know. We'll see. I feel like whatever I get interested in, I usually write about. So.
That's great. Okay, well,
thank you so much for having me on. I love
absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you just one more question.
Sure.
I mean, where can people find you these days and follow your work? Do you have anything that you wish to plug at all?
Oh no. Well, it's Sarah Doing Thing on Twitter. Just singular, not things, just the one thing.
Okay.
At SARAH Doing Thing. What else? I haven't written anything under my government name in a while. I have like alts, but they're sneaky. So.
And people can buy Every Cradle Is a Grave just on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, they can buy it, I believe, on Amazon.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh my gosh, it got mentioned in, what was it? No, I think it was the New Yorker. There was like just a brief mention.
Just recently?
No, it was like a year ago, but it was very exciting to me. I was like name dropped in.
Nice.
Anyway.
I know that I saw it mentioned at least a few times in relation to Raphael Samuel. Actually, it might have been because of that, because there was so much, press around the subject. So maybe it was from that. So congratulations on that. That's awesome.
I love being acknowledged by the mainstream media.
Oh yeah. It's a good feeling.
That's great.
Make sure to follow Sarah Perry at Sister Sarah at Sarah Doing Thing on Twitter. Read her work on both ribbonfarm.com as well as theviewfromhell.blogspot.com, and purchase Every Cradle Is a Grave on amazon.com. It's that time again. It's time for the annual Why Are You an Antinatalist contest, now in its 6th year. For the last 5 years, antinatalists, both established and brand new, have been submitting videos and written responses explaining their answer to the question, why are you an antinatalist? This year's contest will host 3 categories: videos or written responses from established antinatalists, videos and written responses from new antinatalists, and video and written responses from people making an argument against antinatalism. All forms of anti-procreative peoples are welcome to submit, be they child-free, vehement, ephalist, or antinatalist. I'm starting the contest early this year, and we will run longer than usual, so your current submission due date is June 15th, though there will likely be an extension. Once the due date is passed, we will vote on winners for all 3 categories, and each winner will win a prize. Can't wait to see everyone's submissions this year. If interested, visit my YouTube channel, Forever Wolf Films, for more information. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Antinatalism Podcast. Once again, this has been Old Fan. You can find me at Forever Wolf Films on YouTube, as well as keep up with my daily antinatalist news updates at Antinatal News on Twitter. Please follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and email us at exploringantinatalism@gmail.com. The podcast can be listened to on our YouTube channel, Exploring Antinatalism Podcast, as well as Buzzsprout and iTunes. We also have a new website still under construction, www.exploringantinatalism.com. Podcast artwork donated by the incredible Life Sucks. All the best, and bye for now.